Hello, everyone. This is our last panel of Day 1 KBIS 2022, and we've been absolutely thrilled with the crowds here today. I'm Leanne Wood, and I'm your host of the KBIS Next Stage. When we were looking for a moderator to bring the very essential topic of diversity and inclusion to the stage, one of my colleagues on the stage programming team, Sherry Qualls from Whitegood, remembered an article that she read last year. Now, we all read a ton of articles, so the fact that it resonated with her after a year says a lot. The article asked questions such as, why is the interior design industry not more diverse than it is? Why do we continue to pose this question? Because unless we as an industry ask the difficult questions about racial and gender diversity and are intentional about fostering inclusion and inviting people to the table, we will keep having the same conversation and wondering why nothing has changed. And how do we change the industry to ensure people of all races, genders, and ages are represented at the table and their voices are heard? These are all the questions that we ask ourselves, but in this article, they were very thoughtfully penned and supported by in-depth research by today's moderator. Robert Niemanen is the Chief Content Director of IS, formerly Interiors and Sources, and Buildings Media Brand, and an award-winning writer and design industry veteran with more than 20 years of experience in publishing. Rob is going to set the stage for us today with some stats and research, and then he will invite his very esteemed panelists to the stage. Welcome, Rob.
All right. Oh, thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction, Leanne. Appreciate it.
Do you want to have a seat, or do you want to do the podium? Whatever you like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll probably have a seat.
You're double mic'd here.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I'll have a seat then. Relax. So, well, thank you for that very kind introduction, Leanne, and thank you all for being here for this important discussion that we're having today on including more diversity and embracing it, as well as inclusion into your businesses and why that's so critical today. I'd like to just get started right out of the gate by addressing the elephant in the room, if you will. Some of you may be looking at me and wondering, what does a middle-aged white guy have to tell us about diversity, right? Why am I here? And that's a fair question. And I'll respond by saying this. It's about damn time. And this is a topic that I just won't ignore, because if I'm not willing to take the time to listen to the voices that have been marginalized for so long, then I'm part of the problem and not part of the solution. And that's not who I want to be personally or professionally. And it's also, I would be doing a disservice to our readers if I wasn't shedding light on this important topic using the platforms that I have available to me. It's part of the reason why we have been reporting on diversity at INS for a number of years now, as Leanne mentioned in the introduction. And it's also why we at INS financially support initiatives like the International Interior Design Association's Design Your World program, which is a pipeline program to bring design education to K through 12 students in underserved communities. And I want to say up front too, I'm not an expert on diversity by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm thankful to be sitting here in the moderator's chair, asking questions of our panelists who are going to join me shortly, and listening and learning from them alongside all of you. That being said, I would like to share some data on our industry and where we are today in relation to diversity, because if we're going to be talking about shifting forward and moving ahead as an industry, we need to have a baseline of where we are so that we know where we're headed. So I'm going to rattle through a few stats here, so if you'll just bear with me for a moment. But the interior design profession, if you look at it as a whole, is predominantly white. 86% in fact, and just less than 2% of interior designers identify as black. This is largely due to the fact that design education and access to architectural education historically has been reserved for the affluent classes. So lower income communities just have not had the opportunities to benefit from design education and architectural education. I've spoken to a number of BIPOC designers who have told me that oftentimes it's because the parents don't have a clear understanding of what design and architectural education are really about. So they tend to steer them towards careers that they better understand, like law and medicine and teaching. And that's beginning to change slowly but surely. Of the nearly 90,000 interior designers in the US right now, about 70% of them are women. And yet, only 25% of women occupy positions of leadership in design firms. Again, that's changing slowly but surely. I've spoken to a number of design firms and seen news articles across my desk that are highlighting the fact that women are being promoted to positions of leadership more frequently in design and architecture firms, and they are rightfully earning their place at a seat at the leadership table, rather. On the architecture side, only 36% of newly licensed architects are women currently, and less than 2% of those are black. But there are exceptions, of course. There are fantastic and amazing female architects like Smith Group's Tiffany Brown, who we profiled on our cover last year for the tireless work that she is doing to bring access and exposure to architectural education to young women that look more like her. On the education side, black student enrollment is under 10% currently, and less than 10 out of 100 historical black colleges and universities even offer a design degree to their students. So you can see that that's part of the problem that we're facing, part of the challenge. But as pipeline programs like Design Your World gain more traction, and as we're going to see in a couple of slides, some of the societal shifts in the demographics in this country, that's going to change. But we're still quite a ways off from equal representation in the design and architecture profession. Finally, almost 12% of designers in an AIGA design census and Gallup poll said that they identify as LGBTQ+, compared to just 4.5% of the general population overall. And what I found interesting was that almost 9% preferred not to respond at all, which to me suggests that there are many more members of the interior design community who identify as LGBTQ, but for some reason they don't feel comfortable disclosing that information as of yet. So for this next slide, I'd like you to take a look at the photos that you see there and see if you notice anything in particular about them, if there's any commonalities there. And I'll give you a second to kind of take this in. So as you can see, these are the KBIS 30 under 30 and Pro Modelers 40 under 40 2021 picks. And we certainly applaud these individuals for their success and for earning these prestigious distinctions. But I want you to imagine for a moment that you're a student or you're a young professional who's entering the profession who doesn't see themselves reflected in these pictures at all. And what message does that send to them? In conversations that I've had with BIPOC designers, I've heard repeatedly how important it was for them to see people in the classroom, whether it's students or professors, or in design firms, whether it was a colleague or a senior principal who looked like them, someone they could relate to, someone they can talk to, and how instrumental it was in the success of their careers. I do want to say very clearly, this is not an indictment on our industry in any way. It's just a reflection of where we are right now, so that we have a baseline of where we are and where we want to move forward and shift ahead. So there was a great quote that Gabrielle Bullock, who is the director of global purpose of global diversity, for Perkins & Will, she told me in an interview that we had. And I remember having the same reaction when I saw the data on the design industry and the lack of diversity that's in it. And there was this sense of confusion and just wondering, how's this possible? She said, when you think about it, it's baffling that such a creative profession is not as diverse as it should be. And that if we believe the more diverse you are and the more creative and successful you'll be, you'd think we've had this figured out by now. And I couldn't agree more. You'd think in this day and age that we would have gotten there already. There's some good news though. There are a number of societal shifts in demographics that have taken place over the last 10, 20 years and that are going to continue to take place that will bring greater diversity to every industry on the horizon. So very quickly, today 60% of the US population identifies as white alone, and 26% report as Asian or biracial, and 13% are either black or African American. The Latino, Asian American, and black populations have grown by 20, 29%, and 8.5% respectively over the last decade. But interestingly, the census data predicts that by 2045, for the first time ever, the U.S. will be minority white officially, and Hispanics will represent 24% of the population. The Black community is projected to represent 13%, and Asians around just under 8%. So, what are the benefits of these demographic shifts that we're seeing towards a more diverse workforce, and why is that such a good thing? Well, through a number of articles and polls that I've read through, having a diverse team at work leads to a number of benefits, including a greater innovation and creativity. Diversity in the workforce promotes a wider range of skills, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. You have people from a wide variety of backgrounds and skill sets that are now going to be a part of your team, and that is a huge benefit to employers. They also experience better retention, an improved company reputation, and easier identification with diverse clients, which again, if your company reflects the changing society that's out there, those connections are going to be a lot easier to make. And there's also been a boost to recruitment as well. So I'd like to wrap up this portion before I invite our panelists on the stage by just reading this quote from John Otis from the Pratt Institute, who I thought summed this up really well. And he said, empowering people from a diversity of backgrounds to participate and contribute to the field will be an illuminating, beneficial movement within design, supporting greater productivity and creativity in the profession. And with that, I'd like to welcome our panelists to the stage. And if you would join me in giving a warm welcome to Ariane Belazaire, who's the principal designer of Ariane Belazaire Interiors, Alex Capicilatro, CEO of Josh.ai, and Sandra Diaz Velasco, the owner and principal of ELO A&I Design. Is that right?
Got it.
ELO. All right, great. I'm glad I pronounced that correctly. So welcome. It's so good to have all of you. Thanks for being here and sharing your perspectives with us. I wanted to let you know as our panelists get settled, we are going to have time for a Q&A session at the end. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of our panelists, any questions that you might have. So with that, are you all ready? You want to jump into it?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Well, I wanted to get started by each of you introducing yourselves, giving us a little bit of a background on your professional role, as well as a bit of context as to why you wanted to be part of this particular conversation around diversity. And so, Ariane, why don't we start with you?
Sure.
You're an award-winning designer, and I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about your story,
Sure.
Some of the tools and strategies that you've used to, propel you to success in the industry.
Well, I hope that I'm on an upward trend towards success.
Absolutely.
My name is Ariane Belazaire. I am based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so I'm a Southern gal. I definitely have come to this field of design in a very untraditional way, much like the people that you talked about in your slides before. I was not encouraged to go into a field of art. I was encouraged by my parents to do something that was very respectable and upstanding, so I was going to be a lawyer, and then realized that was not my thing. So what I get to do now is I get to focus on residential projects, commercial projects. We're building a team, we're building our portfolio, and a lot of the things that I'm using to not only make sure that we are growing as a business, but also make sure that we're aware of being inclusive, is looking for young, hungry people who need to see and know that there's an opportunity to thrive in an industry that is totally and completely creative. That is one of the missions that I have. That is what has allowed me to fall into this thing and fall in love with it. And I am hopeful that people who are coming up looking at the field of design and all of the many ways that you can be a part of it. I mean, just look at the show. You can be a part of it as a designer, as a product developer, as a salesperson with a company. So many touch points. I'm hoping that people look at the industry now and see not only the opportunity to be creative, but also see themselves, see some version of themselves being successful in it, and that they are inspired to bring their talents and skills to the field.
Sure, yeah. And prior to this event, in our prep call, you mentioned that you had been part of a program called SimSoc while
Yes.
you were at the university. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how that's been a useful tool?
Yes, so one of the ways that I wound up here before you is because last year I was asked to be on a advocacy group with NKBA to talk about the challenges of diversity and how they could be more inclusive as an organization. And as a part of that small group of people, one of the things that came out of our discussions was a memory that I had of being a part of a leadership group at college. And one of the things that we did in the very beginning of our leadership journey together was we had a SimSoc event. And I didn't know anything about SimSoc before. Have y'all heard of SimSoc? SimSoc is short for Simulated Society. And it is the tool that our advisory group used in that leadership group to basically set a baseline and to help us force ourselves out of what we knew to be our context of life and to be open to other people's journeys. Because a lot of what the leadership program was about was learning how to be an advocate for a better community in the sense of everyone working together as a whole. So as a future leader in college, that exercise of simulated society allowed some of us to step into shoes that we have never worn before. Shoes that have to do with what you have access to day one, not by your own volition, but by the assignment you were given in that group. So I don't want to give too much away because I hope that you guys get to have a chance to experience SimSoc. But what it did out of that weekend was it broke down so many barriers for us. It took away so many assumptions that some of us had about why and how people came to be where they are or how they are. And it allowed us to then take in the information that we were learning from certain aspects of society, whether it was, people in education, people in the legal field, people with, the food bank. And instead of just letting it hit us with our own understanding, we were open to seeing how those different pieces of our community could be used and should be used, given the fact that not all of us get the same lot dealt to us just by virtue of how we come into that world. So I hope that you guys have a chance to experience it. It was groundbreaking for me, and I kind of had that revelation in the moment in college, and then I think it's informed the way I've kind of moved throughout life up until this point. But in that conversation about diversity and inclusion with NKBA, I was reminded of how valuable that tool was. So can't speak highly of it enough.
Yeah, sounds like it was a great exercise in empathy as well, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Alex, over to you. So you're an award-winning designer as well on the product side, right? Tell us more about your story and some of the personal insights that you have gleaned and that you've used to grow your business. So tell us about that a little bit.
Sure. Thank you. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking about all these different ideas running through my head. And the first one is diversity means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it's, in my mind, really about just where you don't fit in. And being here, I'm not a designer. I've been to the show, I think, once before, but I come more from the technology world. And I'll talk about that a little bit because that's more of my experience. But I think anytime that you're out of place, you feel isolated, you feel like you don't connect, that's really an opportunity for the greater organization to try to figure out how do we be more welcoming, more embracing, more open to new ideas. So my background, just in a nutshell, is I was trying to start a company probably 10 years ago, at the time as a closeted gay man, and I found every opportunity I had to come out, I hid from it. I was afraid that I would get turned down by investors, people wouldn't want to work for me, I would lose customers. It was just a constant thing that really kind of ate at me. And I remember 3 or 4 years into this business I was trying to grow, getting flowers for Valentine's one day and immediately trying to hide who it was from because I didn't want my employees who work for me to know who I was. And if you don't bring your true self to the workplace, you're suffering in the product, you're suffering in everything. And so when I shifted from that business to this business, I partnered up with a friend who's also a gay man. And from the beginning, we both said we're going to be out from the beginning. He was much better about it than I was, but we basically were making that a priority. But we got into a business where we're working with electricians, plumbers, home builders, and very quickly the same types of things kept happening where I was tempted to not be out to a customer or not be out to people that I was working with. And I fought through that, and I made it a priority to be open, be honest, be sincere. And what amazed me was the number of people that would come forward privately, often saying, I don't want anyone else to know, but I'm also gay, or I'm bi, or I'm trans, or whatever it happens to be. And it was just such an interesting revelation that, to your earlier point, the numbers are very different than what we even know them to be from the stats and the polls. And so this was kind of going on as I was getting into the industry and really kind of building my business. But fast forward to COVID hitting, and then the Black Lives Matters, the protests and everything that was happening. And I was just appalled at how our industry, and when I say our industry, more on the technology side, I don't know what was happening here as much. There were no articles, there was nothing in social media. You look at Apple and Google and these big companies, and they were putting a black post on Instagram, and then you look at companies in our space, and they were posting like it's business as usual, like nothing was going on. And it was really bothering me that we were just head in the sand, not doing anything about it. So I penned an article for our industry press, and I made the title, "Our Industry Has a Race Problem." And 2 of the 3 publications refused to publish it, but one of them did. And I just put it out there, look, it's a race problem, it's a diversity problem, it's an inclusion problem, it's a lot of stuff. But the first step in moving forward is admitting there is a problem. And I'm not an expert on diversity. I'm not someone who studied this. I don't know all the right tactics. But I just said, here are 3 things that are very apparent to me. The first thing is you look at the media. Most of the photos, I'm in the smart home technology side, most of the photos of a smart home are a white family, husband, wife, kids. And there's a lot of I shouldn't say a lot, there's a lack of diversity in that side. And so I just said my company's gonna have a policy that we're gonna make sure that all of our videos and photos are being shot from a perspective of diversity, and that I was encouraging other companies in the space to do the same. And there were a number of other things that sort of came about that I thought we could recommend, that we could try. But to your point, this is not gonna happen quickly. This is something that is systemic in society. It's not just us. This is hitting law, it hits medicine, it hits schools, it hits pretty much every discipline. But I think we can focus on what we do, the people we hire, the way that we create cultures within our organization, the way that we embrace customers. And an example that, just kind of, I'll wrap up, an example that came up was a friend of mine who's a technology integrator in Michigan was telling me that she had a builder that she partners with not want to work with her because she hires black students and black employees. And that just seems crazy in this day and age, but it still happens. And it happens more than I think we want to realize. And so I think it's great to establish a baseline. It's better than it was 5 or 10 years ago,
Right.
But we have a long way to go. And I'm excited that panels like this help us really tell the story and get the message out there that we need to keep improving.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, you mentioned in the beginning that both you and your business partner decided to be out to begin with. What else did you do to try to imbue more diversity and inclusion into your business?
It's a great question. Some of these things, we started off being very naive, but realized pretty quickly that your actions have an impact, and they set people in a good or a bad sort of mood in terms of culture. When we were setting simple things like our holidays and PTO days, we said, all right, everyone does Thanksgiving, Thursday, Friday, Christmas, New Year's. But at the time, holidays like MLK Day are kind of optional. A lot of companies choose that, or President's Day. Juneteenth wasn't even a thing when we started, or it certainly wasn't something that I was aware of. And being aware that these holidays are important to establish for the whole company what your priorities are, we said we're going to make sure that we have holidays for days like MLK Day, like Juneteenth, that are really important. The other thing is there's a lot of implicit bias when you're hiring. We tend to gravitate towards people like us. It's, unfortunate, but it's true. And so we had to set a number of things in place around how we interview, how we hire, even simple things like people often screen the names of the candidates to figure out who's worth getting a call back. You can't do that if you're trying to be, an equal opportunity hirer. And so we just had to put in a bunch of processes, policies. We had to educate ourselves, educate our team. And we're not perfect. Every year we still realize, shoot, we need to improve, we need to do better, we're missing something. But really making it clear that this is important in our company. And so the last thing worth mentioning is, I believe that any company should have core mission statements sort of out there. You should have your belief statements in front of your employees, your customers, and your partners. And we just put diversity and inclusion right there as one of the things that we believe in and that we believe is important. And we have to be honest and look around and say, hey, if amongst our executives or our board or our leadership, we don't have a good, well-represented group, we're not living by our values, we need to step it up. And it's not always easy, especially because a lot of times the people that you're able to hire come in through your networks. Yeah. I get hit up by my alma mater all the time about career fairs and opportunities to hire students. I went to a college I went to UCLA. It's a decently diverse college, but certainly not, in terms of the Black community. And so being aware that we shouldn't just hire from the communities we know, we should really, make an effort to look at how do we find folks that aren't like us, how do we recruit from other areas? And it's not always easy. I mean, I'm interested in getting your perspective on this, but I don't know what it's like to be the first Black person in a company of all white employees or the first woman in a company of all men. I do know what it's like to be the only gay person. I do know what it's like to be, alone in other areas, but being that first person, that takes risk, that takes, a bit of jumping into the deep end, feet first or head first. Yeah. And I think we as a company need to acknowledge that's not easy. What can we do to try to make that easier?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Sandra, you're an award-winning designer or architect, here in Florida. What has your journey looked like as a Latin female designer? How have you sort of progressed forward in the industry?
Well, my story is like I'm way south. Way south. Originally from Colombia, born and raised, educated down there. So my path began way, way, way before than getting licensed here in the States. First of all, making the decision of entering into a career that it's most likely dominated by men, being an architect, because it was, it was always treated like a man, construction strong environment. And back in Colombia, our problem was to be a woman. So that's how things began, just by that. But I was thankful and lucky to be in a university that encouraged equality in all the education. I studied in a public university, and in that environment I learned, thanks to my education, to treat everyone as equal. We were all very different. We had very rich, college mates, and we also have very poor friends. But in a way or another, everything was the same. So we were, we had the opportunity to have all these friends, very variegated, and I think that helped me, kind of forgetting a little bit that I was a woman and more like getting into accepting who I was and believing in the beauty of design, because I think maybe that's a thing that can change discourse. Because in a way or another, I forget that I'm a woman or that I'm a Latino. I just focus and concentrate in what is, and then I just give my best. And I think that's how designs, move to the first row when you show and don't talk much, but just show what you can do. And so that's how things began early in my country. My country suffered in the 90s a lot of violence. So that was also a problem. It was not only, the fact that we had all this, environment of men in construction, and it was difficult for us to be taken serious when we went into the work environment, because, university was nice and all that, but then we have to apply everything, to reality.
Sure.
And at the time, all these mixed conditions, like that, the situation of our country and all that, it was not easy at all. So finding a job was not that at hand. But when I was able to get it, then came the reality of, okay, now I'm in an environment that is only mostly men. So I was lucky at one point to get a job overseeing a bunch of men.
and to say what was going to be done and was not going to be done. And that's how things began going sour at some point. Because people on top, I graduated very young, very, very young. I went to school, very young as well. So I graduated younger, like at 21 or 22. So being a professional architect and come say to this superintendent that was 45 years old that, okay, no, this is not good in a job site. So,
Right.
like that was harsh.
I can imagine.
So that's how I began wearing this. So I went to the site and I was like this. And I had to pose. And I remember a friend here in the magazine Interior Design, when I was invited to speak, and she was saying, you have to fake it until you make it. And that's how I felt instinctively. I was like, like trying to help myself in how I looked and how, I like to pose this serious face and make somehow my words come out the same as my image.
Right.
So, yeah, things like that. But in a way, I don't know, the way that I looked at things was not always the way of feeling that I was not lucky or that I was less, or even though what I was sometimes, because I don't come from a family that it's, that have a lot of money, but not that we're poor, but it was not easy, but I never saw that, I don't know, in a way that I was lacking. That's what I wanted to say. No, I felt for some reason I have great parents, and I was taught that I could do whatever I could or whatever I wanted, if without thinking about anything else. I think that helped me. Yeah. My education helped me a lot to get through challenges that I didn't even think that they were challenges. Right. But I was thinking, oh, this is how it is, and I have to fight it, and I don't know, I'll do it in a way or another, but I will do it. Yes. So that's how I always look at the profession, and that's what back in my country. But at the time in the 90s, then situations in the country went sour, and my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, that's also an architect, we decided to come and live in 2000, and I had a lot of family here, and to come here and educate, and live. Before we were visiting, but everything was fun, but coming to live and, change life is another thing. So the challenges change in form. So now we had to come to a new country. Language was more or less there, but not that good. I don't have an accent at all. Not at all.
Not at all.
You hear me well. So that was one little thing to go over. And then we definitely had an idea of teaming up, and that helped me also a lot. To team up and keep pursuing our goals. Situations were a little bit different here in the country, yes. Race can be a factor. Our country, it's another factor, because when you mention you're from Colombia, people see you, and they kind of prejudge. Right. They may think something or another, and they may ask you some questions about a very famous person. Yeah. And that's the first thing that they're gonna say. Right. Oh, you know this guy, oh, all right, so where is he, or where are you from, or you're his friend? Because I have a last name that's the same last name. My second last name is that one, so people sometimes do these questions, or ask these questions. And, but I was, again, the mindset that I had was like, I don't know, in a way I'm used to this. I'm used to the fight. I'm used to the challenge. I'm just have it there. And yes, I'm used that to men look at how I look or how I am, to maybe prejudge that, because I laugh a lot or I smile a lot. In my university, my teachers will say that I'm Mrs. Smile, because I'm always, I'm all the time smiling, and I see, why not? When I'm not gonna be happy. And but people would maybe think something different, and things like that, phrases like that. But I would take them as, I don't know, as another one to step up.
Sure.
And yes, then we began educating ourselves here in the country, and finally getting our license as architects, not easy because we didn't know anyone here at the level of the profession. Back in the 2000, things were not at all as easy to catch or easy to find in Google that you can come and see it. And since I was not educated here, I didn't have a network of college mates or friends or teachers or I don't know, someone in the profession that could give us a hint. So information was a little scarce at the time. And just knocking doors and making calls and showing up places and between friends, because at that time, many professionals from our country flew the country. We had to leave it. So it was that time where all these from all professions, architects, doctors, lots of really great minds have to flew or leave the country. And then you have lots of friends, like all these are friends from my college, and we work together at my company. And so we began helping each other as much as we could with the information and going through that path. But yes, doors closed a lot.
Yeah.
And no information was given, not at all. And Latino architects, not much. In many places, less women, even less than 10% that you were saying, even here in Florida. And but we had a plan. My husband and I would team up and began getting the license and trying to get a job and somewhere that we were able to give us the opportunity. And that's how we began. Then we opened our company, a very diverse company, in 2010. And we began doing architecture and interior design, which is what we love.
Sure.
And we're a team of very variegated races and country of origin.
Yeah, well, and speaking of, you said you built a very diverse company, and so we're here to talk about the shifting forward. Thank you for sharing your background information. But as we're looking at how companies and maybe people in our audience are looking to bring more inclusivity and diversity into their business practices, how would a firm or a company get started doing that? Like, what are some practical steps that they could take now to sort of shift forward in their business practices? Like, what are some practical things they could do to get started? So, Ariane, you want to start?
Well, I think one of the things is to take a look at your mission, your values, your organization, and just see if it reflects a commitment to diversity. And ask yourself, am I committed? Let's start there. Am I committed to diversity and inclusion in my organization? And if I say that I am, does the way that my organization look, the way that we operate, the way that we hire, the way that we interview, is that reflective of that commitment to that value? That's the first thing. Because I think if you just pay it lip service, then all of the action you take behind it is going to be lacking.
Right.
I think you need to know for yourself that you're committed to it. I think that you need to do an honest assessment of whether or not that's reflective to people outside of your organization or, quite frankly, outside of yourself. And then I think that you should elicit the help of someone who is not like you, who doesn't have a background like you.
Yeah.
If that's your commitment, to just let them share some perspectives with you. One of the things that was mentioned in our Ready call when we had that conversation last year was the fact that little things like paid internships open the doors for so many more people than non-paid internships. Unpaid internships are privilege. I mean, if I can afford to come and work for you and be committed to you for so many hours a week, that means I either likely have employment that's paying me somewhere else, or I have the privilege of having a family that sustains me so that I can have those opportunities. So if the entree point into a company is experience, yet as someone who has to work 3 jobs to pay my bills, means I can't do an unpaid internship, where can I get the experience?
Right.
Right? Just little, it's not even a malicious thing, right? As an employer, I want people to come to me who can bring value. As an employee, I want to learn, but I also need to eat. So as the employer who is committed to diversity and inclusion, looking at opportunities like that and saying, can I afford to pay my interns? That's a small thing. That's a commitment we've made. We've said, I want to pay, and this is a sticking point because I say living wage, and my husband, who's a business partner, says, whoa, now, hold up now. Living wage is different from wage. But do you get where I'm going, right? Okay, I just want you to be able to commit to me and bring your best to me. And I don't want you to feel like to do that, you have to now go and work 20 hours somewhere else, plus go to school and make the grade so that I can hire you full time. Amen? Okay, that's all I'm saying. That's a little thing. And I think if as the people in the audience, first of all, kudos to you. Give yourselves a hand for coming to have the courageous conversation. Yeah. It's not fun. But as people who are saying I'm committed to diversity, sometimes that idea can feel so big. It's like, what can I as a little person, as a little individual do to make a change? And what we're here to offer is it's not really the mountain, it's the little mustard seed. Yep. It's the little thing that will help us move forward. And things like how we hire, how we consider the context of who's coming to the table, moving outside of our networks and saying, not just the people who are brought to me by my prestigious university who are privileged to have that connection, but are there other opportunities for me to go and find new talent and bring them to the table? Those are the little things that all of us can commit to doing. And I think by virtue of that, that will help us walk the walk and not just talk the talk when it comes to diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, you mentioned a couple of the practical things that you've done as far as even the holidays. Any other tips you can offer?
Yes, I mean, the obvious things are the marketing, communication, the recruiting, and the way that you're building the team, a bunch of the internal stuff. But what I think is really sort of difficult, because you can't plan when or how this is going to happen, there are opportunities that arise when you can make a decision that might not be in the best interest of your pocket in that moment, but it's in the best interest of diversity. And so an example of this is when I wrote that article, and I had editors saying that we're not going to publish this article, I went to my team and I said, we might lose some customers. They're going to be the racist customers, but we know they're out there. We might lose some partners. We might have some people that don't want to do business with us. But it's important that we put our foot down and that we stand up for those that we believe in. Yeah. And those moments only happen so frequently, but you have a choice. And a lot of people will choose to do the easy thing. And I think choosing to do the hard thing in those moments is how we really move this forward.
Yeah. Sandra, do you want to add anything?
Well, I think the road is going to be very long, and I think it's up to us to kind of have it stand up and keep showing the best that we can, keep doing our work, and showing it off as we always do, and we have to, like it's sometimes it's. Like I've been saying, it's like not the fact of being asking always, but the way to always giving. And when you give, maybe that someone sees it, and someone sees your sample, someone sees how you lead. And the fact that I have a lot of friends that write to me through Instagram or the social media posts, and they say, wow, you made it, or you did this, or like this association portrays you and show what you do. And I think that's a way to show and say that they can see reflecting themselves in you. And you show by example, by working harder, by showing up always and being there. And I think that's the way to do, leading by example, and try always to give your best.
Yeah.
And I think that will be the best.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of that, I mean, who's doing it really well right now? Are there companies, organizations, or firms that we could look to learn from and emulate? Does anything come to mind for any of you?
I can think of ASID. ASID. To me, they changed my life. Like I was part of the Ones to Watch program.
That's right.
And they created this program about 3-4 years ago. And I was very lucky to be part of one of the 8 designers or professionals selected nationwide to be learning all about leadership and diversity. And we were traveling all over the country, and we were giving best professors, best places to go, talk about this and learn about leadership, emotional intelligence, because I think maybe it's a key factor. Like that term may sound easy, but it's not at all.
Yeah.
And many of us have this thing that we may not know that we lack of. And I think leadership and like being training in that about training your emotional intelligence to make it to keep you going up no matter what, and not taking everything personal as well.
Sure.
Because we're always in the point of, okay, it's me.
Right.
No, it's not always you.
Right.
It's not everything is not about you. It's about things greater than you. And if we can maybe erase ourselves from one moment and think about the greater good, that's something that we have to learn first.
Yeah.
Learn to know ourselves more, love us as we are, and then going out to give.
Yeah.
And that may sound easy, but I had to learn a bit about it.
No, that's it.
And that program helped me a lot. So they are amazing. Like the leader that was there, Randy Pfizer, at the time, he was a visionary. And he created this program, and now it's really great. And I have a lot to thank for that.
Absolutely.
And I'm just an example.
Okay. That was beautifully said, by the way. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Alex or
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, without giving a specific example, because I'd want to make sure that an example I give doesn't actually screw up on, being a good example. I've been pretty impressed with some of the largest companies. If you look at the Fortune 50 companies, what they're doing, because they're actually hiring people. Oh, give that a quick second.
4:45.
all right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Time is 4:45.
Yeah, we still
Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, so. All right. So what I'm seeing is when you look at companies like a Google, for example, they have the means to hire people who are academically trained in how to help make more diverse environments, how to properly handle marketing, how to properly write job descriptions. And there are little things, as you had mentioned, that you might not think of. So just a brief example. I remember at some point someone had mentioned we had a job description that someone on my team wrote for a job within their team, and it was written by a man, and it was not meant to be a gender-specific job description, but the verbs that were in there, the way it was written, the idea of like a sales rock star, whatever kind of things were put in there, were not the types of words that would have attracted a female audience,
Right.
and definitely not the types of words that would have attracted a non-white, applicant. And so I say, go look at how Google's putting their job descriptions out. Those are all public, they're easy to find, and pay attention to how they're wording it, what they're doing to try to make sure that they're not being biased. I'm actually pretty impressed with some of these very large companies doing some really meaningful things.
Sure. Okay. Ariane, what about you?
I have two quick examples. One, near and dear to my heart, is Modanis, Veronica Eagleson. She puts together and has put together for years a blog tour and design hounds. And I will tell you, Veronica has been instrumental in me being in the room with brands and establishing relationships that I have not only kind of morphed into brand partnerships, but also have elevated me as a designer in the types of products that I am now either aware of or have had the opportunity to use in my projects. And so she has always made sure that her group, whether it's a blog tour group or a design hounds group, has been diverse. And I don't ever remember it being one year where I look at it and it's like all lily white people. It's a good mix of diverse backgrounds. She gets she's Hamilton, in the room where it happens. She gets you in the room where it happens. And she, I think, has been a beacon and a connector in that way. And I wish that more people would kind of watch the way that she makes sure that new voices and new blood is always infused into opportunities. The second is an opportunity that I was beneficial from in year 2, and it was a collaboration between the Black Interior Designers Network and Architectural Digest. So Architectural Digest, we all know, is like
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like we all just, I mean, that's it, right? That's where I don't, for me personally, that's like it for me. A lot of us have been inspired by it. A lot of us have aspired to be in that publication. But to be quite honest, Architectural Digest is not just putting anything in their pages. They're putting top quality designers, architects, and projects. And with those are projects that have clients that have money and influence, right? So if you are someone who isn't getting opportunities to design for celebrities or people with money and influence, how can you ever aspire to be in that publication? But during the year of social injustice, 2020, where people were rising up and saying, let's have a conversation about opportunities and race and what happens, what's the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
Not only did Architectural Digest participate in the blackout, but they said, we're open. Where are our deficiencies and blind spots? And I will credit the Black Interior Design Network for being prepared in that moment to say, this is an opportunity. If you will partner with us, we are a network of designers who are very talented from all over the world. And we may not have a portfolio that has, you know, Lenny Kravitz as our client, but we have talent, just give us a chance.
Yeah.
In Architectural Digest, they stepped up and they said, okay, what if we create an opportunity for you where budget isn't an option? Time isn't an option, location is an option. What if you could just use your imagination and design to your heart's desire? And last year was the very first time that they launched their iconic home. And it is a virtual show home where they chose 12 designers, Black designers from all across the country, to take a room and just imagine. No budget limitations, just show me what you can do. And it was amazing.
Wow.
It was so inspiring. And I remember watching that and going, that is what you want to have happen. You want a company to say the thing that they are saying, but do the thing they said they were going to do. And you want an organization to say, let me help you, let me partner with you to give you the resources. And so I was awe-inspired by that opportunity, and then floored when they invited me to participate in the 2021 option. So I was able to do that last year, and I will tell you, being able to say that I have partnered with Architectural Digest because of an opportunity that came out of a very courageous conversation, that is an example of what could happen if people were open to having the conversation. That's it. That little thing, right? Remember I told you the mustard seed? They just had to give us a virtual house. They didn't have to buy us. It would be nice to buy us an actual house. But they didn't even have to do that. They just had to use their resources and their platform to amplify people who were really talented, already doing the work out there. And I think that's one thing that I would want anyone listening or watching to get. None of us are saying we want you to do us any favors. None of us are saying that we want you to change the rules for us. What we're saying is be aware that our opportunity to show you what we can do is contingent upon so many things that are outside of our control. And so as a community, what we want is to all do our part little by little to make sure that more people get more opportunities to show their actual true gifts and talents. That's the goal, that's the dream.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. Well, time is just burning up here. So
I know
think
they're going
we
to
have
put us
time-
out in a minute.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
We have time for maybe one more question before we go to a Q&A. So let's just end on a positive note. And I want just to know, what was one of the most amazing or rewarding moments along your path in the career towards diversity and inclusion?
Well, the easy thing is I just told you mine. So
Yeah, okay, great. Alex.
Give me a quick second. If you want to go first.
I think I already said the also
The
the
SID? Okay, all right. Well, you know what?
opportunity was great.
All right, wonderful. Okay, so we talked,
No, this one.
this one.
be here.
This one. Yeah, and KBA took, I know that this particular part was not in the program at the begining, and they had the courage to put it in there. So I think this one is great.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, we've got 5 minutes left, so I think we'll open it up for a Q&A. So if anyone in the audience, if you have a question for one of our panelists, we have someone that'll come with a mic to get your questions answered. So if anyone, the floor is open if anyone has a question.
No questions. We answered all of them.
What's that? I don't know.
In the meantime, for me, I'll just say my answer to that is more not one moment, but the micro moments.
Okay.
All those little moments and times where I thought, I kind of want to hide who I am. I kind of want to not lean into this. And instead, I force myself to be a little bit outside my comfort zone. And it's always paid off. And so it's just all the little things that have added up. The client that I thought I wouldn't get, the board I wouldn't think would want me because of me being gay, and just the realization that the more that I can be authentic And the more that people then reach out to me and say I help them, be more comfortable in their own skin, it's a lot of those little micro moments, not one big one, but a lot of little moments that add up.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions? We'll throw it out there again to the floor if anyone has any. There's one in the back there. All right, perfect. Oops. Turn that up for a second.
I guess I'm wondering, at this stage in your careers, have you ever still felt the effects of maybe code switching or respectability politics, or even just still hiding who you are at this stage, maybe to get a new client or for a big opportunity? Do you still run into that?
Great question. Yep, jump in.
I'll just be really quick, and then
There you go.
every single day, it's always a feeling,
That's
it's
my
always
answer.
there, and just always have to push through and say, you know what, the last 1,000 times it wasn't a problem, I'm gonna keep, being positive and being confident.
Same thing here. I was gonna say that. It's always you're a woman, or you don't have the experience enough, you don't, many factors. Oh no, you live too far. Like whatever question, it's always gonna come.
Yeah.
And every obstacle is gonna come your way. So it's just, again, like being able to know yourself, know who you are, love you first, and then give out. And showing up always with your best face, and just making sure that you always put out your best every time. And I always can bring something good. Nothing else than that.
I think that I've gotten to the point in my age and career, and I'm a little bit more courageous. There was a long period of time in my career where I actually hid my face. So I wanted my website to be portfolio because I wanted people to judge me on my talent. But what I quickly realized is that they don't know I'm a black woman and I show up ding dong. I don't want that to be the first time. I mean, let's just be honest. So there was a point a few years ago where I said I have to have the courage to be more vocal and more face first on social media and on my portfolio, because that, you know what? Hey, if I'm not for you, that's great. Like, know that straight on before I get to your house. But I also think that people, I have found, they feel like they have an opportunity to know me as a person, because I'm a whole person. I'm not just a designer who does a thing. I am a whole person. And I think when you allow yourself to just have the courage to stand in your truth of who you are, you already know you're going to attract and repel. And once you know that, you're like, hey, that was the trick. Like, I'm not trying to attract everybody. I'm trying to attract my people and repel the others. And I'm not for everybody. So it's okay. So knowing that is what has allowed me to now sit in the confidence where I don't feel like I have to code switch. The same, y'all see me slide in and out of this girlfriend? Like, that is what you get when you come to my office and we have a design presentation. Whether you're a black doctor who's my client or a white stay-at-home mom, you're gonna get all of me. And you're gonna love all of me, or you're gonna be like, that ain't for me. But that confidence comes in just continuing to do like they said, just continuing to be yourself and to know that not everyone is for you, and that's okay. Because not all money's good money if you gotta fight
I
for it.
agree. Totally.
Yeah, amen. That was well said. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much, Ariane, Alex.
Thank you.
Just appreciate all your insights. Thank you for being courageous as well and sharing and being vulnerable. So also want to thank NKBA for having the courage to have this conversation, this dialogue. So thank you all for being here as well. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you.